Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast NBA playoff edition. I told you guys we'd be back to recap the second round of the NBA playoffs, and
we're back.
We have our NBA expert, Evan Debo, on the line, ready to talk some hoops with us, give us some insight, go over what happened in the second round, and talk about what we're both expecting in the third round, the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals. Evan, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Martin. Thanks for having me back. Excited to talk second round.
No problem, sir. No problem. You are the hoop expert of the group, so we got to have you when we talk about some hoops. Before we go over the recap, I think we did not get a prediction wrong, I believe, except for the first one that we're going to talk about, the Heat and the Bucks. I know both you and I said we wouldn't be surprised if the Heat win this series because they look like they're peaking at the right time. But the way that they won it, 4-1, I don't think either of us expected that. When you saw that series go down, what did you think? What did you see? Just talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really, really unexpected. I mean, I think we both thought, this series was going to go 6, was going to go 7 potentially. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for kind of a Herculean effort, obviously Giannis went down in Game 4, but if it really wasn't for a Herculean effort from Chris Middleton, who honestly had a really good series, and some of the supporting cast, they don't even make it to a Game 5. So the writing was kind of on the wall once the Giannis injury came into effect. But I don't think anybody saw this, Martin.
No, not in 5. Not in 5 games. That's kind of crazy. You talked about Chris. Yeah, Chris averaged about 25, 26 a game this series. Something.
Yeah, he averaged 25.7 or so for the series. But just very unexpected effort from the Bucks. And I can't remember if we alluded to this or not. I know you and I, outside of the podcast, if that's the case, have discussed this. But I mean, a lot of similarities with the first go round with LeBron, right? Where you have this absolute monster in the paint who can attack the bucket with ruthless abandon there. And you put an army of shooters around them. Well, suddenly, a paint monster is injured, or you bring in the second unit and you got to expel him with some rest. Suddenly, you've got a bunch of guys who can't really create for themselves. And that, I mean, and Chris, give him credit. Chris Middleton did what he could do. Again, he had a really good series, but Giannis was really stifled. On the offensive side of the thing. And we'll come back to this theme in the next couple of games or couple series we'll talk about. But just credit the Heat's game plan going into this too. I mean, if you watch the games and listen to the commentary, there's a lot of discussion of the defensive wall. So when Giannis is in transition, which is where the Bucks made a lot of their efforts in terms of putting up production on the offensive side of the ball. The Heat really did everything to take that around. Every time Giannis touched the ball at the top of the arc, I mean, he'd have to give it up in hopes that he can get it back, with under 9 seconds remaining on the shot clock. They just put up that wall of 3 guys or so kind of spread out in the paint, ready to help contain and, really force Giannis to be a jump shooter, which, we know he really, really struggles with. Not that he can't knock those shots down, but I mean, he especially struggled with those shots in this series. So I mean, the Heat really, really locked down on that, and then they had a heck of a series on the offensive end too. So Jimmy buckets, right from the get go, and those first couple games kind of set the tone. I mean, he didn't have a monster series by the time the stat line came up towards the end of it after all 5 games, but very, very efficient. And the Bucks, for as good as a defensive team as they were, they've been really, really average. They were really averaging through the first and second round, and then in the seeding games leading up to this too. And this was the NBA's best defensive team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball with 3-point percentage and defending the arc. I mean, they really let the Heat have it. They had the second of the playoff teams. I believe they had the second worst opponent 3-point field goal percentage based off of assists. So to me, that says that's not a percentage based on, a guy just pulls up on his own. That's second worst on, being receiving a pass to be credited assist and shooting the ball. So that to me says, hey, they're out of sync defensively. That second or third defender isn't rotating to that short corner, or wherever it is on the whip around, or if they cross court there to find somebody open, that second or third defender on the weak side is just not rotating. So they were not themselves. I think too. We really underestimate how big going into the bubble and everything else going on. That the Bucks were definitely a team I think affected by that. I think they proved themselves throughout the regular season that they're a better team than what they've shown. But again, credit to the Miami Heat. I mean, they've been the aggressors pretty much for all of this span in the Eastern Conference. In the bubble, in the seeding games, and they've got themselves a ticket to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since the Big Three era with LeBron, Bosh, and Wade.
2014 when the Heat played the Spurs. In that championship.
Yes.
Now I want to go back to Giannis. I have his stuff. I was looking at it when I was prepping for this, and like when I'm looking at his field goal percentage, I mean it was like 50%, which is usually for him. That 3-point percentage, I had 21%, and his free throws were 53%. It's just, when we talk about that wall, it's just not going to cut it. And I know when we talked about outside of this, the similarities between this first go around with Giannis and LeBron, even LeBron was shooting better than 21% from three and 53% from the free throw line. And I think if you're that type of player like Giannis, and you're constantly driving to the hole and you're constantly getting fouled, shoot, even Shaq made comparisons to him and Giannis, but Giannis needs to make those free throws because he's going to be at the line all the time. And if he's only shooting 53%, that's not going to cut it. And then another player on Milwaukee that I was disappointed in was Eric Bledsoe. He did not shoot the ball well at all. He was only shooting 33% from the field. He was also shooting 21% from three. He averaged 11 points, but they weren't meaningful 11 points. And just like you already said, kudos to Miami. They had the complete game plan. I mean, Jimmy Butler, I know his ascension's been something else that we've been watching since his Chicago days, but this is just a whole team effort. Him, Gordon, Ben, Jay, Tyler, Duncan, Kelly, like they just have a team that they might
really well-rounded
marquee names, but they really know how to play together. They know how to shoot, pass, play defense. And even if you look at a player who they got this offseason, Andre Iguodala, who's not really stuffing the stat sheets, but he's being a leader in that locker room, and he has that championship experience. So, and then with Eric Spoelstra being a champion and Pat. So kudos to them. I was really disappointed in Milwaukee because I know they're a better team than losing in a gentleman's sweep. But Miami wasn't afraid, and they came to play and they knocked them out.
Martin, I got one more player I want to highlight on. So you mentioned Bledsoe. Obviously, he's he's not going to fill up the offensive side of the ball. Not that he's not capable of going out and get some around 20 a night and helping to distribute the ball, but obviously his bread and butter is on the defensive end of the court and making the opponent work and stuff. But they before the season the Bucks decided to part ways with one Malcolm Brogdon, yes, who they really could have used in this series in terms of shot creation, in terms for himself and others. They really needed that additional ball handler that wasn't a spot up shooter like a Pat Connaughton or a Dante DiVincenzo or a Kyle Korver. So there was that, but who they replaced him with, he's a serviceable veteran, but Wes Matthews, out of 117 players tracked in the second round, according to the NBA's advanced stat site, a second worst out of 117 players was one Wes Matthews in terms of plus minus. So when Wes was on the floor, his plus minus was negative 12 points. So like you're at that much of a deficit just by having him on the floor.
Right.
So that you're not getting anything from offensively, you're not getting anything from defensively. So I think all those things, and again, I'll give them somewhat of an asterisk for, the whole bubble thing, but I think you're right. They proved themselves better during the regular season, that they are a more capable team. And it was unfortunate to see them go down that way. But with that being said, a lot of questions move forward with Giannis. Is there's reports last week that he's already met with ownership and did a mass unfollowing of Instagram followers and Twitter followers, unfollowed all the Bucks teams accounts and all his players accounts. He's got 1 year left on his deal. They can tender him obviously the super max, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't look good if that player doesn't sign for the guaranteed deal to stay in market to re-sign. And that's obviously with the most recent collective bargaining agreement, you can re-sign for more money to stay home instead of travel somewhere else. But if he turns that down real quick, I think the writing's on the wall almost of, hey, it's he might be forcing Milwaukee's hand. I mean, they're going to have to do some overhauls of the roster. That could be a potential CP3 destination, to, depending on if they want to pick up that huge $40 million a year salary. So, I mean, a lot of questions there.
Right. And the last thing I wanted to say about Milwaukee before we move on, that you brought up that contract he can sign with Milwaukee, because the NBA implemented that. I think, was that after the decision?
Yeah, it was after the decision. I mean, so being a Cavs homer, I know that Dan Gilbert led the charge there on hey, we're in a disadvantage. We can't compete with the Miamis of the world and everything else, in addition to Comic Sans letters and everything else stupid he did at the time. But, again, that was a good push in theory, but players by and large like to have the flexibility. They don't want to be locked into 4 and 5 year deals. I mean, way back when Jalen Rose was signing 7-year deals in Indiana, and I mean, you can't fathom somebody wants to commit to a city for 7 years anymore. They want the 1 year, 2 year deals with player or club options, and they like to time it up right with their buddies so they can get together and join. But no, you're exactly right.
That's what I thought. Yeah, but CP3 would be it might be who they need to look at. It's just a matter of contract. But next Eastern Conference series was not a dud. It is everything that we said on our last episode was going to happen. The Celtics and the Raptors went all the way to 7. Celtics edged it out 4-3. When we recorded our last episode, Celtics were already up 1-0, and they kind of thrashed them, but we both said don't count the Raptors out, and they proved us right. They were down 0-2. OG hit that game-winning shot in Game 3, brought life to them, and then from then on, it was almost a completely different series. When you watch that series, especially that Game 6, especially in the bubble too, is that one of the better series we've had the past couple of years?
Oh, hands down. I mean, I think it's going to be tough with the remaining games left that we're going to find a better game than Game 6 of this series, that that went into the multiple overtimes, that just when one team made a run, the other team would come back and recover. Just a great series. Credit the Raptors, obviously. Let's just talk about what kind of year they had. Nick Nurse, Coach of the Year. After losing Kawhi to the Clippers, they made such a run, and just a great Spurs-esque team of basketball they play. I mean, it's by committee. It's plug a guy in. I mean, when you think about big three players, you don't think about a Fred VanVleet being a night-to-night impact guy, and they've really made that out of it. I think he's going to be a free agent of sorts. I can't remember if he's going to be unrestricted or restricted or not coming up, but I mean, he's due for a huge payday. But I mean, what an amazing series. As we eventually will get into the Nuggets and Raptors series, man, if Kawhi had stuck it out on just this team and ran it back, I'm going to be honest. I think they could have had a really good shot at repeating this year. I mean, they definitely would have come out. If you add a team that just lost to the Celtics in 7 in the second round, knowing what lies ahead, even though it will be a tough Heat team, if you had Kawhi on this team, I think this is your NBA champion right here again and coming out of the East. But with that being said, Celtics defense really showed. They're NBA playoffs best, holding their opponents to 40.5% from the field. And also they're the best defensive team from the 3-point lines perspective and limiting shots outside of the arc. going through the back of the net at 30.5%, which is best in the playoffs again. So that Celtics defense is stymied. They were able to get through the series without Gordon Hayward, and that's going to be a nice bolster heading into the Heat series to add a player of his caliber, even who's kind of had somewhat of an up and down year back to their squad.
And you brought up the Kawhi thing. I think it's kind of crazy too, because both us liking Cleveland and LeBron was owning Toronto during the DeMar DeRozan days. It's kind of crazy seeing how Toronto was always just one player away. And then when they got their one player in Kawhi, I mean, barring all the other stuff that happened, they won the championship. And then them losing Kawhi, and they took Boston, who we'll talk about who we think who's gonna come out of the conference. They were one game away. Like, just looking at those scores, besides game 1 and game 5, each game was decided by 7 points or less. So I'm very interested to see what Toronto does in the offseason. I think keeping Fred's a priority. I don't know if they're going to try and look for someone that maybe you can't get a Kawhi on the free agent market like that, but maybe try and get some other good role players. Had one of our buddies saying that Toronto reminded them of the 2004 Pistons. I thought that was a pretty good comparison. But with Toronto, to my guy, who I felt like if he would have played better, they actually might have beaten Boston, Siakam, he did not have his best series by any stretch of the mean. Yeah, he averaged about 14, 15 points, but he was shooting 30.
Which is really under what he averaged on the season. Yeah, 15. I have him at 15.2 for the series. Just 39% from the field, and even worse. Is that accurate? Is that 13%?
I have 13% from three as well.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I mean, too, we know he's not a shooter, but I mean, I almost feel like if there's going to be a theme to this podcast when it comes into why did series end out the way they did in the second round, I feel like it's almost going to be kind of like a ghost of Christmas past, present, and future with three guys. And, instead of Ebenezer Scrooge is the common three. I mean, really, their Scrooge is going to be the wall defensively. What do you do when you can't shoot? There's three guys surrounding you every time you drive to the bucket, whether it's Giannis or whether it's Siakam, or the third guy we'll touch base with in a little bit, Russell Westbrook. That's really the theme across all three. They go to the bucket, and there's just an army of defenders waiting on them. You take away their number one scoring option, applying the speed and the strength and physicality to get to the rim like that, they're really limited. And we saw that out of Siakam in this series. That wasn't the guy we saw in last year's playoffs, and a guy for what it is, probably really benefited from having a Kawhi Leonard to open up the floor for him to drive and to kind of be a really, really, really good second banana all the way through the Golden State series and the route to a championship last year. But Siakam's got some work to do in the offseason in terms of continuing to develop his game. He's still a young guy who didn't touch a basketball till like he was 16 or 17 anyway. But he's got to work on some handling. Obviously struggles with that and turning the ball over at times when he dribbles for too long, and then continuing to expand his range away from the bucket.
Right. Yeah, he still has a ways to go. And then I just want to talk about Boston. The two who I felt were really carrying them was Tatum and Smart, especially Marcus. I didn't expect. He's a good player, but I didn't expect him to play the way he did. I had him at about 16 a game, around 15, and then
that game, game on the line, game tying block he had with 59 seconds to go in game 7. I mean, to keep his body away from Norman Powell on that breakaway too. And I mean, he got it in the whole way. Usually that's a bait your defender in. It gets to the line, and if you can finish, great. If not, you're gonna get foul shots out of it. I mean, what a clean block that went the other way and ended up leading the free throws to Boston, and they sealed it. I mean, Marcus Smart, for what he is, I mean, he's a guy who you hate to go against, but I think is Jason Tatum put it best. Game 7, chips down, win or go home. That's a guy I want on my team. That's a guy I want rallying the troops. That's a guy I want, and I know every possession is going to be diving for every 50-50 ball. Is going to try to save the 30-70 balls that you have no shot at trying to get, just to give his team any kind of edge he can get. what a series from him defensively, which we know what kind of player he is, but also on the offensive end. How many games a series did he hit 3, 4, 5 3-pointers in a game and just, I mean, really hurt Toronto and gash them as a guy that they would not expect to be putting up that kind of consistency behind the arc.
Right. Yeah, he played phenomenally. And then Jason led the team. And I even glossed over Jalen. He was around 20 a game. Kimba didn't have a great series, which it is what it is. I mean, his team uplifted him, but he had about 17. But they were really top heavy because once you go down to like the rest of the team, Cantor really didn't do much. Langford didn't do much. Carson, Taco, those boys didn't even see the field. So I'm interested to see how their top 5, 6 players are going to do against Miami, because Miami's, I feel, potentially maybe as well balanced, maybe more well balanced than Boston. But we'll leave that for when we talk about the next rounds. Next thing, we're going to head to the West. Ooh. And then I don't know if I want. I guess we'll go with them now. The Lakers and the Rockets. Houston won the first game, and I was like, okay, they might make it a series. And then they lost 4 straight, and it wasn't even close. I'm gonna let you go because I have my points I want to say, and they all pertain to the Houston Rockets. But for LA, they've made it as business as usual. But you go ahead.
Well, I think that was really interesting right off the bat that, Houston, who had, gone the distance with OKC in the round before and had very little rest, came into that Lakers series and put a pounding on them, 112-97 back on September 4th, take that 1-0 lead. But it was a 4 straight sweep after that. And I think for the Lakers, they tried to run business as usual. They really adjusted their model with their bigs. So, in that first game, JaVale played for 13 minutes out there. Dwight off the bench had 11 as well. They really got away from that model, and they kind of went small. And Anthony Davis has long been a guy who says, I do not want to play the center. Do not play me at center. Even back to New Orleans, where they brought in Boogie Cousins to be his center before he got injured. He said, you know what, I think I can post up PJ Tucker and, not be as frustrated and everything else. And, they really dominated outside of that. They had some great support from some role players, Alex Caruso, real solid in there, as well as, Markieff Morris. So, a lot of people, when you think of the Morris twins, like if you gave me a pickup game right now, and it's down to the Morris twins, I got to pick which one I'm going to probably pick Marcus. As much as that guy drives me nuts, even as a fan, and when he's not playing against my team, that guy drives me nuts. He plays with that same Marcus Smart, Draymond Green edge, and always talking to the players and getting under the skin and everything else. I mean, but by far Marcus is usually, and still, I mean, if you ask me that right now, it's going to be the case. But Markieff really had a really good series. I can't remember if it was game 2 or game 3 that he had I think 14 points in the first quarter, just coming off the bench real quick. I mean, that was a huge lift to those teams, and then or to the Lakers' effort in that 4-game basically sweep after game 1. But we got to talk about playoff Rondo, man. We joke about the playoff Paul George thing, which we'll get into probably a little bit again in our last series here. But Rondo really came in as that much needed second fiddle ball handler to LeBron in terms of the distribution efforts. Had a solid series. The only issue I had with Rondo in that series wasn't from Rajon, it was actually from his brother who got ejected in the last game, John, with Westbrook. So with that being said, that was a huge boost to get him back, dealing with the injury for the start of the bubble and the first round of the playoffs. And I think that'll help them too going into the next series against either the Nuggets or the Clippers, as we're taping this about 27 hours before what will be game 7 in that series. So Martin, what did you see out of the Lakers and Rockets? We'll touch base on a couple Rockets things here probably.
I think with the, we'll go backwards. Playoff Rondo, I mean, for you and I, and for anyone who watches the game, I mean, that's a legitimate. I would be okay if that was his legitimate nickname. If you remember the days when he was in Boston, those playoff runs,
Oh
from
yeah.
what he was in the regular season to what he was in the playoffs, I mean, it's just night and day. And to do it at his age still and coming back from that injury, he's going to be a big piece for them. And I just felt like the Lakers just had after that game one, they just had their way. I mean, Braun and Anthony were both averaging about 25 apiece. Also with LeBron
Yep.
becoming the winningest player in the postseason, something like that. Most wins.
Yes.
But I mean, with those type of records, I mean, with the people back in the day, they were only playing best out of 5. So
real quick numbers on Rondo: 10.6 points per game in the series, along with 7 assists and 4.6 rebounds, and
that's
44%
Rondo.
from
But
three.
yeah, I mean, LeBron was LeBron. AD. I mean, Kyle even played well. Rondo, Danny, Morris,
Talen Horton-Tucker, the rookie, a no name for all the season, has worked his tail off to get into the rotation, and he had a really solid performance there in the closeout game too. Only 19 years old. That says a lot about LeBron's trust in him and the whole team in terms of giving him
I think
valuable
also
minutes.
when we pegged this series last episode, we both had the Lakers winning. I didn't think we had it in 5. I think we said potentially 6 or maybe 7, but I didn't think we had them just smoking them in 5 games. So I think with the Lakers, it's good on them. I don't even think the series is more about them. I think it's more about the other team.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was really we said at the time when they got rid of Capella, decided to do this uber small thing that Daryl Morey said, right from the get go, is we're going to try this out and see how it goes. And here it is. The Lakers didn't even have to use their bigs against them, and AD and LeBron just dominated, averaging well over 50 points combined for the series. And they really struggled. We mentioned the Westbrook piece about the Lakers would throw up the wall, and Westbrook's just kind of running out of there, out of control, and we'll get in and do like a 360 chuck back up to the top of the arc when he doesn't see anything in there as he like falls out of bounds and tries to save it. Just kind of it was a gamble. I appreciate the gamble. Houston's got a lot of tough contract stuff under them. They traded the house basically to get off that awful CP3 contract and bring in Westbrook, and they shelled out some picks to do it. They're handcuffed financially. They're handcuffed in terms of assets. You see a lot of guys on their roster, Jeff Greens, the Robert Covingtons they got creative with to be able to bring in here and play center. But a lot of kind of flyers on guys, Michael Frazier, Ben McLemore, Daniel House, who had a fun time in the bubble. So much so he got kicked out of the bubble for a young COVID test lady visiting his room to administer late night COVID tests. But yeah, I mean, just the Rockets have since parted ways with Mike D'Antoni, and I guess the other way around, Mike D'Antoni has said that he's going to. It was interesting, going to seek free agency himself at 70 years old. So he's done with the team. I'm not sure where they go from here, but the Rockets are still kind of handcuffed. They don't have a lot of options here. What do you think about the Rockets,
too,
Mark?
we said if they didn't. Oh, that was even when they went to Game 7 in their previous series. If D'Antoni lost that series, he was going to be out anyway. So for him saying adios, I mean, that's not really surprising to us since we kind of foreshadowed to that.
No.
Before I get into the statistics side, I mean, I work at a job that deals with a lot of people, analyzing people. You work at a job that deals with people, communication, and body language, things like that. When I watched the Houston Rockets, I felt like their body language was terrible. It got to a point, especially in that Game 5, where it just felt like they were lifeless. Game 4 was the same. They were down by a whole lot, but they charged back and lost by 10. But just watching this team, I think I've been off the Houston train for a while, but I think they're officially out of being contenders in the West for the foreseeable future. We've just been dealing with this since 2013, even before Westbrook and all of them. They get to a point, and then they disappoint us, especially in elimination games with James Harden, at least since they were in the bubble, he didn't lose and go to a strip club after, or maybe he did. We don't know. But my main thing was with Russell. Russell was traded for CP3. Russell wanted to.
Man, could they have used him in
Yes,
that series?
if they would have switched them, I don't think they would have gotten smoked in 5. But when I just look at Russell, I think we need to talk about if he deserves that superstar label anymore, if he's just a star. Because when it's come to the playoffs since the KD saga, he's been not out of the first round except for this past time with OKC when they just beat OKC. And his just playoff performances have been awful. I just don't think he's at that superstar level that we laud him for, like the LeBrons and the KDs and the Kawhis. I just think he needs to be off that, especially when I'm looking at his stats now. He shot about 42 from the field, 25 from 3.
10 points in the closeout game, 36
And for
36
the point guard
minutes.
to shoot 53% from the free throw line, I mean, I have a point guard in my family, so that's just terrible. But what do you think? And then their supporting cast just didn't help. It was just bad all around. I feel like they gave up after game 3, just from a body language perspective, and it just made me sick watching them. And I said on the previous episode, I don't like watching the Rockets, but I only had to watch them this time because they were playing LeBron. So
Yeah, I mean, Houston's a team that a lot of people don't like to watch. They're just to watch James Harden hammer the rock for 20 seconds and either pass to a shot or chuck a 3 or flail to the rim and get to the foul line. I mean, it's efficient for him. But it's not the good authentic basketball that most of us like to see. And if you're a Rockets fan, heck, like that's not a knock on you. It's just because it's clearly gotten the job done. Here you are in the second round of the playoffs yet again. There's certainly a formula that works there, but this is a team with not a lot of options, and I'm not sure where they go from here. They've mortgaged the farm to do a lot of things. There's some rumors of Sam Cassell, finally former Houston Rockets great, coming back home to coach and a lead assistant, one of the lead assistants on Doc Rivers' bench, and has been back to the Celtics days. But just I'm not sure where Houston goes from here. To your Westbrook point, Russell, we knew that was going to be a thing going in. Is how do these two guys share the rock when they're so dominant in terms of time of possession and how much they need the ball to be efficient. Somebody brought up a good point I saw on Twitter about, like if you imagine if James Harden went back to, early James Harden OKC days, he would do backdoor cuts. He would work off ball, and that's obviously not the game anymore. But I think that was tough for Westbrook coming in. I don't know if that dynamic gets better. It's going to have to if they're going to do anything. To have to look at James dribble the rock for most of the time, and then you kind of just take the bench scrubs when he goes to sit and try to figure stuff out there. But yeah, I mean, Westbrook's not. I don't want to see any more ESPN power rankings of Westbrook in the top 10 for players and stuff. I think at one point, obviously with the MVP year that was really stats heavy, where he was hunting rebounds and everything else that. There was a time where he deserved to be up there and inside the top 6 and everything like that. But I don't think those days are here anymore. I mean, he was in school with Kevin Love at UCLA already, a number of years ago. Kevin's in his 30s now, so I assume Westbrook's pretty close there in age and stuff too. So and I just don't see him elevating his game anymore. I think he is who he is as a player, which is a phenomenal player. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Westbrook can still put it up there and average 20 some a game and everything else. I'm not saying he's a scrub, but in terms of what he can bring to a winning team, I mean, he's got to be second banana for the right one banana, and he's got to be a third option on a great team, I think, to get over the hump and get that man a ring. So on the Harden front too, I mean, I've been thinking about this more and more. I think Harden's kind of like in terms of regular season success and postseason kind of stalling out. I mean, he's I'm going to throw out a name, George Iceman Gervin. That's a dude that put up buckets, averaging high 20s and really, really, really had some good years and stuff in there, and never was able to get a ring. Your Chuck Barkleys and everything else. It's not to say James won't get to that spot or what have you, but I mean, the clock's ticking on however many years he's been in the league, and he just hasn't been able to get over the hump across two teams. Obviously, close he got was that finals against the Heat, but I don't know. A lot to be said for the Rockets.
Yeah, and now they don't have a coach, and I mean, Sam might be nice. We don't know. But it's just, I just can't harp enough on James and Russell, and then Harden. I think he said today that they're one piece away. I don't know what they're one piece away from.
Well, if their one piece is an entire bench, maybe they are one piece away. But it's going to take a lot more than one piece.
I don't know what he was talking about, and the disappointment is just year after year with the Rockets. It's the one year they could have beat the KD, Steph Warriors, and they missed 27 threes. Then the next year when they played them and everyone was hurt, they let Steph just go off and beat them. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, with D'Antoni gone, I don't know if Daryl Morey is going to be gone soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a possibility.
Spoken of. Yeah.
Who knows? I doubt it, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that come across as a Woj bomb here in the next 2-3 weeks. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, so I mean, they need to reevaluate what they're gonna do. I don't know what's out there for. It's kind of funny too. I was like, well, maybe they needed another scorer, another 3-and-D guy. They just need a lot of things. That style wasn't gonna work, and the late great Kobe Bryant said James Harden's style was not gonna work in the playoffs. It just doesn't work like that. Same with Russell, but there's another series that we have to talk about because I could keep talking about them forever.
And that last series is
Clippers.
The Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers going to 7, just like everybody thought.
And I think
we
did have Denver beating Utah.
Beating Utah at the time we filmed it. Yeah, we did not. So yep, they did advance as we predicted. But we did. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I did not see this series going 7 against the great and mighty LA Clippers.
I thought when it was 3-1, I thought it was going to be over in 5. But I guess we should pay Denver more respect because I think you were the one who shared that when it comes to elimination games, they're undefeated right now.
They are as of yesterday when they came back yet again. They are 5-0 dating back to the Jazz series where they were down 3-1, came back, won that series 4-3. Some folks in the state of Ohio clearly fond with 3-1 comebacks. So I think I saw the Cavs Twitter account say, "Welcome to the club." So that was nice. And then, they got down 3-1 to the Clippers here. And the Clippers have really, kept their foot off the gas pedal. Is yesterday Denver won yet again to even the series and send it to a game 7. That's going to, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, will air tomorrow night. Or the game will air tomorrow night, not this podcast, but which will be Tuesday. So we'll see how fast our producer can get things turned around here. But it's amazing. I mean, and I think there's a common theme of the Nuggets being down a lot in some of these games that they've come back in, and they just pour it on in the third and keep the momentum riding in the fourth. And I mean, you could see it, the frustration visibly on the Clippers' face yesterday in the fourth quarter when, what they were putting at the Nuggets, and the Nuggets just kept slinging from 3 and putting in buckets. And Jokic is doing the awkward turnaround. Nowitzki fades from a 7-footer and just draining them. I mean, just drain. They had no answer for him. Zubac looks like he got thrown in a washing machine. Just doesn't know which way he's getting spun. You're exactly right. We have not given Denver enough credit. They've certainly earned it. I think it's equal parts, Denver's success and equal parts, the Clippers just kind of letting their foot off the gas pedal. Obviously, yesterday's game, Pat Beverly fouls out. They had a few others in foul trouble. In game 5 on Friday, the the basic just, hey, here's a starting job to a solid vet who's really fallen off for all of this year and last year. Paul Millsap had a heck of a game on Friday night, 17.6 boards, really kind of got the third quarter rolling there Friday night, and that transitioned into a close win for Denver in the fourth. But just it's amazing. I mean, the Joker here is got to be. We talk about Westbrook's fall out of the top 10. Joker's got to be a top 5 player right now. I mean, that guy distributes from the elbow. That guy is unguardable on the offensive end, and he can move. He can do hook shots. He can do fades. I mean, he can step out from 3 and hit it too. He had 34, 14, and 7 last night to go with Murray's 21, 5, and 5. I mean, just an impressive win from the Nuggets again. I'm excited for the Magic 2 Words in Sports Game 7 tomorrow.
And I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. It's really 50% Clippers taking their foot off the gas and 50% Denver not giving up. There have been games where the Clippers have been up double digits and they've blown the lead, and they've let Denver sneak in and win the game. And I think whenever you guys do listen to this, with Game 7 being tomorrow night, if the unthinkable happens and the Clippers lose the series, I mean, not just for the whole team, but definitely for Kawhi. Kawhi's got to be, that might knock him out of the top 2-3 player discussion, because you can't make all these moves, have this team who we both pegged to be in the Western Conference Finals and potentially make the finals, and then lose to the Denver Nuggets. I just feel like it's really it's Game 7. It's a must-win for all of them, obviously, but it's definitely a must-win for the Clippers. And Joker said it's like all the pressure's on them. They're the ones who are supposed to make it, not us. And if they lose, then we have to have a real talk about Kawhi and Paul George, and if they were overrated, if this team was overrated, because I don't see how they can lose. They have 2 top 25 players. They have a top 5 to 10 coach in the league. So it'd be bad.
I really feel bad for, this was supposed to be the Clippers year. Not to say I do expect them to win tomorrow night. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if the Nuggets can do it, but if you give me Kawhi in a Game 7, I'm going to take that, man. I mean, he is a bad dude. I think Kawhi goes for a high number of points tomorrow from the get-go, and just they build up a lead that the Nuggets just can't overcome this time, or it's just a steady diet of Kawhi, picking and choosing his spots, which will open up some of the floor around him when he's more of an aggressive scorer as opposed to letting the game come to him. I do expect him to move forward, but I really feel bad for the Clippers, fan base too. They have not ever, in their 50-year history, ever been to the Western Conference Finals.
No, closest they've been, if you're a Hoops fan out there, if you remember the middle 2000s with the Elton Brand.
Well, they made it to the semis, didn't they, against the Rockets in the last? With CP3 and DeAndre and JJ,
yeah.
But I mean, here we are again, where they are 48 basketball minutes away from, if they're not at the end when the clock hits 00 of not hitting again. You're exactly right. I mean, I think obviously they've got a lot of flexibility. They shelled out tons of picks to bring Paul George in. Paul had a really good game yesterday. I mean, they didn't lose that game by. We've been on Paul a lot, and rightfully so, with how he played in the first round and how he's played some games this series. But 33, 6, and 3 for Paul yesterday in 39 minutes. I mean, he was more than playoff Paul moniker yesterday in my assessment. I mean, he really did well. But again, just they didn't keep their foot on the gas pedal. Marcus Morris really struggled, 5 points in 30 minutes. Zubac, their starting center, contesting against Jokic, only 2 points in 30. I mean, that's just not going to get it done. So, I mean, with that being said, this is going to be another great Game 7. I'm glad we've got basketball back, and it's exactly because of games and situations like this where we don't see it, and we let the guys on the court figure it out. Real
quick, with Game 7 being tomorrow, who do you have?
I'm going to take the Clippers. Again, I think they're going to have to come on with a good mindset to tackle Jokic there. Not literally. I mean, they got into foul trouble. The Denver or Clippers got in foul trouble last game, so they can't afford to do that to Denver this go around and keep some players like Beverly in the fold. But I don't know whether that's a concerted double right off the bat or whether that's working some of that Doc Rivers 2-3 zone in there a little bit more just to help out Zubac and defending Jokic in the paint. But if they can clamp down on them, I think that'll really help them. But I like Kawhi to have a big game in there, and they'll advance on to the Lakers in that Western Conference showdown we all wanted to start the season, I think. So what about you?
Yeah, I'm taking the Clippers as well. I mean, they got too much to lose. They have to pull this out. I just feel like they have the better team. They have the best player. They have the better coach. They have to get this done. We'll be both watching tomorrow night, texting frantically, seeing how this goes. But I do have the Clippers so that we can have the showdown that everyone wanted even before coronavirus was a thing. The Lakers and the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals.
Well, let's stay on that same track because we obviously will have a little bit less to say before we end on the Eastern Conference Finals. Quick preview here, but in the West, whether it's the Nuggets or the Clippers against the Lakers, do you think it's an either or? Are you still picking the Lakers to go to the finals against either of those two teams, or do you really think, hey, like we do have to, which I mean, I think we surely have to do is bet each team and be like, you know what, I think X, Y, or Z could happen. There's so many different matchups, obviously, on both teams, but it honestly kind of has been like, it feels like it's the Lakers' year. So, I mean, do you have that mindset going into this series or not?
I do. At the beginning of the year and like during the regular season too, I really felt like the Lakers Clipper was a pick 'em. Like I could flip a coin and whatever it landed on, that's what I was taking because it was so close. But during this bubble, the Clippers really have not impressed me. I mean, we talked about it in our last episode they struggled against Dallas until Kristaps went out, and then they took care of them. And now they're in Game 7 with Denver, with the Lakers winning both series in 5 games, and they're giving that old man number 23 more rest. So I just feel like it's the Lakers Western Conference to lose unless the Clippers are just like, oh, we've been joking around. Now we're playing the Lakers, so now you're going to see us super serious. And I just feel like it is their year. And even with the unforeseen circumstances of Kobe passing, I just feel like everything's aligned for them to get it this year, unless the Clippers prove me wrong, but they might not even be there. We'll see tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think I honestly think it's a pick 'em between any of these 3 teams at this point, and I want to give Denver their due, as we have said earlier. If Denver's in the series come Tuesday night, at the end of the Game 7, when the clock strikes 0 at the fourth quarter, I think that I think they could give the Lakers a heck of a series, and I think they've more than proved themselves each round that they can go the distance. That each round that if they fall behind, they can come storming back. And it hasn't been to the flurry of Golden State, but it's almost kind of Golden State-esque in those comebacks here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Golden State is something. Yeah,
they're almost in that mindset that like if you knew those Cavs Warriors series. If the Cavs were up 20 on Golden State, and there were a lot of lopsided games across those finals years between the Warriors and Cavs, you never thought a lead was safe. And that's almost a spot now and they're doing a little bit differently. They're not doing it with, an onslaught of 3-pointers, but I mean, that's really been Denver's MO through these 5 elimination games is it doesn't matter how far they get down. They're going to come storming back and no lead is safe. Even the games they lose, they're not completely getting the doors blown off them. And that's a credit to how Denver's playing on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they've really picked things up there. It's been a huge boost to have, or a huge boost to have Gary Harris back defensively on the wings too. So, I mean, I don't think I'm at a spot right now to decide one way or another, but I wanted to start our conversation with that of just, going into this playoffs, I picked the Lakers to at time win it all. You're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of ancillary things, and you've got the rallying point of the Kobe Bryant tragedy, and LeBron's 17th year in the league, and how well they played this year. I still have that mindset and have those glasses on looking at it, but I think true. I just need to see the matchups a little bit more and know.
Eastern Conference. Just a quick preview. It's the Heat and the Celtics. They also play on Tuesday. Game 1. I feel like this is another series that could potentially be like the Celtics Raptors that can go 7. Cop out. I don't know who I'm going to take in this one right now. I think Boston has more talent, but the way Miami's been playing, I just don't want to bet against them. What do you think?
I mean, it's going to be an offensive defensive matchup for sure in terms of the Heat's scoring ability and way they can fill up the sheet as a unit versus Boston defensively. I mean, Boston's you mentioned earlier about Toronto kind of looking Detroit-esque of sorts. Yep. I see that more in Boston. I mean, Boston's always been a stout defensive team, dating back to Doc Rivers' years. And that's really carried through the rebuilding, brief rebuilding years with Brad Stevens, and then obviously years down the road with Brad Stevens now. I mean, this is a stout defensive team against one of the better perimeter scoring teams in the league. I mean, I like Boston to advance to the NBA Finals. I think the series, I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat, the Heat end up making it there too. I think it's gonna be close. I think the series goes 6 or 7, but Boston doesn't have near the depth, in my opinion, that Miami does. I worry about some of while Miami has some bodies defensively to throw at Jason Tatum in terms of the Iguodalas and the Jay Crowders. I don't know that Jay Crowder is going to be as hot as he is. I watched him for however many years in Cleveland, from behind the arc. I mean, he had a heck of a second round, and, towards the end of the first round there too, shooting the ball from the perimeter. But I like a young Jason Tatum and a stout defense willing themselves past Miami here. I think it's going to be close. I think you're going to see maybe a blowout on either side moving forward. But, I think when we go to the NBA Finals, you're going to see the Celtics there. And dare I say, we could be looking at a Celtics-Lakers series yet again. Oh, joy.
That would be good on so many fronts. But we're just going to have to wait and see. Game 1 is tomorrow. We'll be back once the conference finals are over, reviewing that and doing our finals preview. Real quick, since the last time we recorded, MVP still hasn't been announced. Every other award has. I don't know what's taking that one so long.
I think they're reevaluating the Giannis thing after that series.
I don't think you can do that after.
I don't think you can do that either.
But yeah, it would stink. But I mean, watching the Cavs and LeBron and all the thing, it's just so similar. I mean, if he wins an MVP this year and then he lost in the second round, and like it's almost going to Miami Part 2 all over again.
Hopefully, he doesn't end up on Golden State. Yes.
But that's really all we have for this one. Evan, do you have anything else you want to hit on before we bid the listeners farewell and get ready for these games tomorrow?
No, I think that's all I got. I'm really excited for the slate of games coming up. I wish they wouldn't keep scooting the draft back further and further for all things Cavs. I desperately need some Cavs infusion back in my life with who they're going to end up going with the 5th round pick. But I think they're slated to go at the end of November now. But no, I'm excited to see. I think these are going to be 2 great series either way. I mean, not that we haven't gotten a great basketball treat with yet another Game 7 here in the bubble in Orlando, but excited to watch and see how the Clippers and Nuggets do battle with a loser goes home aspect to it, and who moves on to the Lakers from that series, and the slugfest that we know is going to be the Heat and Celtics. So appreciate you having me on, Martin.
Oh, no problem, man. And yeah, we're definitely going to have a draft episode when that does come, reevaluating the draft and who went where. I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who listens to our podcast. I know that we cover a whole bunch of things from sports to wrestling to you name it. So your guys' support really means a lot to all of us. We're just a group of friends who finally took that leap and put our expertise out there. So once again, I want to thank Evan for being our hoops expert and coming on talking some hoops with me. I want to thank you guys for listening. This is the L7C podcast. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.